Welcome back to #Africa. It's been a good few weeks for Safaricom, and it was an even better results week for its investors as the telco reportedly added 6.5% to Kenya's GDP and also posted a pre-tax profit of about $909 million in the year to end March 2019. Now, Vodacom has benefited from its investment in Safaricom. Vodacom's fortunes in East Africa are set to continue as it finalizes its acquisition of M-Pesa. I spoke with Vodacom CEO Shamil Jusuf about the future of mobile money in Africa.
I think, very strong growth in our international operations, 15.6% up, becoming a more material part of our business. Just from our international operations, 23% of our revenue now coming from our international opcos. And then our portion of Safaricom takes our contribution from, let's say, our operations outside of South Africa now to 30%. So quite material in all respects. And Safaricom's done really well. 14.7% jump in profits. So very strong performance. So obviously the acquisition bearing fruit, if you like. But one of the interesting things and exciting things has been M-Pesa and financial services. We now have 46 million customers buying a financial service from us across the continent. We have 110 million customers in total. So, a very important part of our play going forward. We move something like 2 trillion rand through the M-Pesa platform. So I think, we're not just a telco anymore. We're a telco and a financial service house, if you like.
Malawians head to the polls for the 2019 general election on the 21st of May. There's been several attempts at coalitions to oust incumbent President Peter Mutharika. Former President Joyce Banda abandoned the election race and is now backing opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera. Over 20% of voters are undecided, and some analysts say that things could go either way. To discuss this further, we're joined by University of South Africa Institute for Dispute Resolution researcher Advocate Sipho Mantula. Advocate, many thanks for your time. Let's perhaps start with some context on the latest as we approach that crucial election in Malawi.
Thank you very much, my sister, and Evening Africa. I think what is critical about these elections compared to our recent election in South Africa is that since 1994, Malawi came out of what we call the one-party state to become the multi-party state, where now their elections are what we call harmonized or the tri-parted, meaning it's your presidential, parliamentary, and local government elections. As we have said, coalitions are there, but what is at the stake? It is the office of the president. It is the 193 seats of the parliament. And we have many more candidates. We have only 6.8 million voters. So one can say that it is an easy country to can manage compared to us, where we had more than 22,000 voting stations. In Malawi, we are only talking of 5,000 voting stations. What is, again, peculiar is that you don't have women presidential candidates. You have only 7 men who are contesting for power, including the son of the former president, Bakile Mulusi, Utapile Mulusi. And as we have said, the former president, Joyce Banda, has not been contesting, rather he's supporting one of the main opposition parties, the Malawian Congress Party.
Let's talk about those contesting parties a little bit more. We've got the DPP, the United Transformation Movement, as well as the Malawi Congress Party, which, as you've mentioned, is an alliance with Joyce Banda's party. Who are we seeing as a front runner here in terms of the change that the people want to see?
One can look at the United Transformation Movement of the current Vice President Chilima, who has been very vocal, who has been contesting even corruption allegations against the current president, Professor Mutharika. Remember that there was the food scandal issue that came out last year in Malawi. And then when you look at Chakwera, one can say that with the blessing of the former President Joyce Banda, he might pull up some votes of the young people. Interesting aspect is that they might even get voters from the foreign nationals. If you are in that country, if you have stayed for more than 7 years, you are allowed to vote for the elections. So they might be looking at that foreign national votes, but at the same time, one can say that the current government, it is under pressure because of the allegations of corruption, but as well as, remember, this is the country that just came out of Cyclone Idai. So they are still reeling those effects of Cyclone Idai.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the corruption there, deep-rooted corruption, and I think one of the big issues that government is going to have to deal with after the election is this corruption. Where does it even begin? You've mentioned the aggregate scandal, and there have been many others before.
Yeah. There were many. Actually, even the former President Joyce Banda was involved in what they call the Cashgate scandal. And as well, that country, one can ask, why is there so much corruption in the country that is so poor, that is not even developed due to corruption of leaders? And when you look as well, the European countries have a stake in that country. This is one country that there are still natural resources, and at the same time you look at the observer missions. South Africa have been privileged to have the former head of state Thabo Mbeki leading the Commonwealth observer mission in that country. So like you are saying, the issue of corruption, it even makes the young people not to be interested in these elections in Malawi. And as well as we are aware, the Chinese, Japanese have placed their foot in that country with the airport that was recently built of International Kamuzu Banda, which it was a mockery in their social media. And I think another aspect is the role of business as well as politicians.
Let's speak a little bit more about former President Thabo Mbeki there. He's leading the Commonwealth Observer Mission into those elections, and we've also got an observer mission from the EU. What exactly will they be looking for in these elections when they happen on the 21st?
Definitely, they will be looking at the electoral process, that state of readiness, and they'll be looking at even one can say playing that role of endorsing or end up, one can say, saying that these elections have met the criteria of the elections. It is only the African Union and SADC Electoral Observer Mission that is giving even technical support, but at the same time observing those elections. So one can say it has been the cultural ritual of elections in the continent that you do have to have international observer missions just to do the checks and balances, because electoral fraud, electoral rigging, it has become the buzzword in African elections.
Many thanks for those insights. I've been speaking there to UNISA's dispute resolution researcher, Advocate Sipho Mantula. When we return, child soldiers released in Nigeria. Stay with #Africa.